Well, thanks very much, Gemma. Can I start by thanking you and the Advertiser and the News Court team for the Bush Summit program. This is, of course, not the first Bush Summit, and hopefully it's not the last. It's an important opportunity to elevate the role that our regions play, not just in South Australia but around the country, and I think it's exceptionally purposeful. Can I acknowledge all of the dignitaries that are here this morning, starting with the Honourable Claire Scriven, MLC, who's the Minister for Primary Industries in South Australia, Mr Tony Passon MP, who is the local member, the federal member for Barker, and also, I know, very much committed to this community, Vincent Tarzia, the Leader of the Opposition, Tim Whetstone MP, and I see Ben Hood, who I know is also a member of the South East community as well. Can I also acknowledge the Bowendick people? I, for one, do think we're pretty lucky as a country that we're home to the longest living culture that human history has literally ever known. You know, people talk about the birth of Christ being a long time ago. Well, that was 58,000 years after the Bowendick people first started to call this part of the state their home. So I think it's worthy of acknowledgement and celebration. It's also true to say that the history of modern South Australia is pretty unique and worthy of recognition as well. And I thought I'd just reflect on the story of one particular bloke who I like talking about from time to time because I think he is a magnificent example of the spirit of our state. When you think about the people that came to South Australia in the 1840s and 1850s, it's somewhat mind-boggling. Here were people that were buying land from the South Australian Company in the United Kingdom, sight unseen, buying land, and then decided to get on a tall ship to take months of travel to go across the seas to land in a foreign country, in a foreign land, at the complete other end of the earth, to start a whole new life with zero expectation and understanding of what it was that they were confronting. To be able to take on a task like that would be completely foreign to most modern Australians. It would be almost impossible for us to comprehend to do such a thing in the current modern age. Yet all these people did it. And you would assume for a moment that almost anyone that decided to embark on that exercise would be an optimist, and most of them largely were, except for one bloke who came from Liverpool in 1848. He landed in Sydney and then made his way to South Australia. His name was George. He was 22 years old, and George wasn't an optimist. In fact, famously, he was everything but. George was, to put it mildly, a realist. If you were more frank, you would say that George was a bit famous for being a pessimist. He had a keen eye to be able to observe anything and everything that could potentially or possibly go wrong. On all accounts, he was dour, frugal, had exacting standards, very little patience for any of those around him that lacked the same attention to detail that he was possessed by. His meticulous character ensured that anyone that worked with him or around him tended not to enjoy it too much. But all of these characteristics actually came together to be an incredible gift for the people of South Australia. As George's star rose in the Surveyor-General's office, he was sent out to explore the outback of South Australia, a parcel of land that was later to become the Northern Territory. But along his journeys, when he came further south, he made a number of significant discoveries, the most famous and important of which was on a journey where he travelled from west to the east. George was looking to try and establish where in the state agricultural production would be productive and where it wouldn't. So he started out on the west, just north of Ceduna, and started to put on a map a line. He went from Ceduna to Arno Bay, and then jumped across the Spencer Gulf at Moonta, and from there it went northeast to Orroroo before plunging sort of sharply to the south down towards Peterborough and Burra, and then crossing the Murray at Blanchetown before making his way to the Victorian border just north of Pinaroo. The meticulous attention to detail, the inane and permanent determination to ensure his record keeping of rainfall was precise and accurate resulted in him formulating a line that changed the state forever. Because, of course, young George was George Goyder, and he established Goyder's line that unleashed a wave of prosperity as there was a rush to acquire land south of Goyder's line for some of the most productive and valuable agricultural land anywhere known in the world at the time. The rush was on, agriculture boomed. Trees were felled, there was clearing at a rate that hadn't been seen in much of human history. And as a result of this, George worked out that his magnificent piece of surveying in actual fact had created a really big problem, because the population of the state was growing and we were running out of trees, there was no timber, we couldn't build homes. So they called on George again and they said, "George, mate, where are we going to put some trees in the ground so we can grow some timber for the state's prosperous future?" And the Europeans wanted to do it around Jamestown, and George said, "Nah, there's another place in the southeast of our state that's far better for growing trees." And of course, it was George that established the Green Triangle, George Goyder that established the Green Triangle, which today, of course, we call home to Mount Gambier and our surrounding regions, which has got one of the most productive and advanced forestry industries anywhere in the world. Now, I tell this story because these stories aren't unique. Roxby Downs has its own story with the establishment of Olympic Dam. Port Lincoln has got its own story as one of the most productive places anywhere in the world for high-value aquaculture. Whyalla, which was critical defending our nation during the course of World War II with the creation of its industries. Woomera, home to one of the most important assets in the context of the space industry. Port Augusta has got its own story that commenced with the Overland Telegraph. You name it, regional, not just regional South Australia, but regional Australia is littered with stories that are worth being told because it illuminates our consciousness of the role that regional Australia plays in the birth of our modern nation. A highly productive, industrious, advanced modern economy that almost always has its descendancy coming from regional Australia, which is why it is absolutely critical that governments at every level do their best to ensure that they continue to invest to address both the challenges and the opportunities. And in respect to the challenges, most recently, of course, there have been a great number, a disproportionate number impacting regional South Australia. Only a few years ago, we were acknowledging the impact of the extraordinary Murray floods that happened at a rate or at a scale that we hadn't seen since 1956. Big challenge, big implications. More recently in South Australia, we're enduring some of the worst drought conditions that we have seen since records have been kept, records going back to Goyder himself. And then, of course, when we thought the Murray floods were a distant memory, they've reared their head again, making a significant contribution and laying the seeds to, of course, what we now know as a harmful algal bloom unlike any other we've seen in the history of the Commonwealth. It is important that we recognise these challenges and then governments respond accordingly, not just to provide support that will come and go, but rather see them as an opportunity to build the resilience that we already know exists in the people of regional South Australia. But more than that, the challenge remains for governments and indeed each and every one of us to ensure that in addressing the challenges we don't take our eye off the prize. The prize being the opportunities that we have before us in this state at this incredibly important time in our nation's history. Because, of course, this state continues to be the fastest growing economy in the nation. We continue to punch above our weight in our economic performance, and in no small part that is a function of the productivity and industrioususness and the ingenuity that we see in regional South Australia. So much of our growth aspirations as a state are embedded in our regions, whether it be the opportunity of copper in the north, whether it be the opportunity here in the southeast to see to a continued framework to grow our agricultural sector, but also our forestry sector. And that is why we choose to investing in the skills like the Forestry Centre of Excellence, tens of millions of dollars, building the technical college here in Mount Gambier, making sure that we're investing in a brand new TAFE facility, because these are the legacy investments that will unlock the economic opportunities while at the same time seeking to address the challenge of drought, which even affects here. So to that end, I sincerely hope that the Bush Summit over the course of today doesn't only focus on the challenges but also engages on the opportunity. Every time a government chooses to invest collaboratively in conjunction with regional communities, it is always worth its weight in gold. That is something that we remain committed to and appreciate the opportunity we engage in. And I conclude by simply thanking the Tiser for yet again elevating the cause of regional communities. I'm glad the For Pete's Sake campaign has concluded, maybe. I don't know. Time will tell. But it is important, and we value it, and we thank you for the partnership. Thank you very much.